All right. So the first thing, what do we want to do? We want to talk about the scripting first.
Sure. Happy
Okay.
to
Tell me
do
about
that.
it.
So, yeah, we're looking. So, I guess from top to bottom, the way this is set up is that over here on the left-hand side, at least I have it on the left-hand side, I think this is default, is our scene tree, which is kind of like the hierarchy of all of our game objects, I guess. That's the Unity, the Unity term for it.
What's the Godot term?
These are scenes, technically. But nodes
That
can
makes
also
sense.
be scenes. So there's like a little bit of weirdness there.
That makes a lot of sense, because then you can have asynchronous loading. Is that correct?
Yeah, depending on, if it's kind of interfacing with the UI or not, I guess would be
The reason I bring that up is because in Unity, in order to do asynchronous loading, where things don't cause frame hitching and they load in the background, you cannot load objects. You can only load scenes. So that's why sometimes with a level, you have to break it up into like 5 or 6 different scenes.
Oh, I see.
And asynchronously load those in. And my opinion is, it seems like Unity is starting to move in the Godot direction, where like things are more like scenes. Like groups of objects are more like scenes that you load into a bigger scene. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's correct. I mean, so just as one example here, we're looking at this scene is my main island that you see in all my devlogs. So I've got a bunch of stuff that you might expect, typical stuff, camera, tile map. I've got this parent that's just an empty node of like a bunch of every organism and thing that you actually see in here. Then a bunch of helper things like weather controller, day-night controller, various spawners, which add organisms to the world, right? And I could kind of open up any one of these as its own scene. So like my research vessel, which is this little sailboat down here, this is its own scene that has its own huge tree of stuff going on, right? And so
it's a prefab.
It's a prefab, yeah. So,
but look, is a scene a prefab? Who's more correct, Godot or Unity, in your opinion?
So that's tough for me to say with authority, because I've really been disconnected from Unity for so long. I haven't like done much in it in 5+ years.
I would argue that Godot is correct here, because there is literally no difference between a prefab and a scene in the context of Unity. The only difference is literally what they're named. Because if I open up a prefab in Unity, it's effectively opening up a scene.
Yeah.
Just like in Godot. So it's just a weird discrepancy. It's redundant language.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's a sprite. So inside of this research vessel docked scene, what do we have?
Yeah, so I mean, this one's quite complex. I don't suppose that's a bad thing. This is important because, and this was actually quite tricky for me to figure out, because the player should be able to walk up this gangplank, be on top of the gangplank, walk underneath the sail, be in front of these sideboards and on top of the wood, but be behind these sideboards and stuff. So there's kind of like a lot going into how this is constructed. In fact, I'm pretty sure that, these are all different sprites, which comes into play with, where the player actually ends up being spawned in this scene tree so that he can be behind certain sprites and in front of others.
Are there like sorting groups?
So the way that this works, at least the way I have this working, there's kind of an implicit rule here where things at the bottom of your scene tree are rendered at the top. So how I actually have this is that, I have my sails, that's just the little like ripples at the bottom of the boat. I've got what I call the near deck, which as you can see is kind of the forward deck portion here. Then I have this node called entities. This is where I actually end up putting the player when he walks onto the boat.
That's what I was going to ask.
Then I've got sprites behind it. So because these are further up in the scene tree from where the player is rendered, they render behind the player. So I'm kind of using this implicit rule here to achieve that.
Is entities a random word, or is that intentional?
What I named it. It's just a plain empty node 2D. It's like the simplest little placeholder. I use this keyword entities pretty consistently throughout any scene that really the player or NPCs can inhabit, just as a way for me to think of, all right, I know that when I put things into the world, they're going to go here. And it lets me collapse them, get them out of the way, and make sure that they're ordered correctly with other stuff.
Can you enter play mode for me and show us this player walking on this?
Yeah, cool. So we've spawned inside the research vessel is kind of like my version of in Stardew Valley. You spawn in your house every day. This is kind of your home base. Depending on where you last sailed to, you'll appear at that island. And in our case, it's going to be this kind of coral island is this one that I'm always showing.
Awesome.
Looks like it's raining and thunderstorming and lightning.
Was that randomized?
Yeah, the weather is chosen at random based on time intervals. So if we play long enough here, the weather could change.
Hey, can you explain to me how the pixelation is so precise? It looks like all of your pixel sizes are exactly the same size.
That was probably one of the biggest and most common pieces of feedback I got from my earliest projects on my YouTube channel. People were just like, make the pixels the same size. It's like the number one
100%.
thing that
you have
pixel artists need to do. I didn't know that, right? And in fact, in Blink, I've got pixels of different sizes all over the place. So I'm very intentional about that in Dolphin. You're right. Every pixel is the same size here.
Are the trees pixels rotating?
So these have a shader applied to them that gets activated during storms or windy weather where they sway. And so this is not like a pixel perfect effect, obviously. So these are just moving by small float numbers back and forth. This is just a shader that I probably borrowed.
Technically, the pixels are rotating.
Yes, their position's changing and they're rotating here. Yeah.
It's hard to tell, though. That's not accurate to 90s games because 90s games, they just could not rotate pixels. But I couldn't tell. I was just curious.
Yeah, and there's more of that, right? Like when you walk through these guys, they'll kind of shake a little bit. So I try to do it sparingly, but I think I don't know, it feels a little bit more modern, and it certainly feels more immersive to me to have this type of effect.
Oh, sure. No, I think it's great. I couldn't fully tell that that's what was happening. Cool, man. Okay, so if we go back on the boat, let's see all that. It's so important for people to know how complex that boat was, all to just achieve it's like a normal person looking at this would be like, well, it's just a boat.
Right. So another fun thing about this that just took me so long to get working properly, you'll notice that when the player is on the boat, the camera is fixed. When they exit to the island, it becomes a follow. It's a very good reason for that. In order for all the stuff that we were just looking at in the scene tree in terms of its ordering to work properly, when the user crests this gangplank, just like that, I have to move the location of the player out of the entity's bubble in the island to the entity's bubble of the boat, right? And so that has to happen, and I don't exactly remember how I achieved that kind of smoothly because, reparenting nodes in that way at runtime, especially when they're the focus of the user, can sometimes be a little choppy. Mm-hmm. But that's what's happening here is I have to reparent this node to an entirely different scene and still have all the controls work seamlessly. But that's what allows him to all of a sudden be on top of the gangplank and under the sail and behind this railing here. So,
well, the thing about game development is the things that you think are easy are hard, and the things that you think are hard are easy.
This is what I love. This is, when I talked about getting into computer science because I love problem solving, like, oh man, I eat this stuff up. It was tough, but I love problem solving like this.
For me, parenting let's say a persistent object that is core to your game, like a game manager or the player controller, parenting and moving that character around nesting it inside of different objects is so dangerous. Yeah. Because if that object deletes, the game doesn't play. You know? So I don't think I've ever decided to parent my player controller onto anything else ever. It's always outside everything else. And I've tried it and it always breaks things. So I understand 100% what you're saying.
It could be that there's a much easier way to do this as well that I just haven't figured out. But when I built
you can ride the boat, right?
Yeah. So if we enter the boat and go to the map, this is where we can say we want to set sail.
This is so fun.
There's a lot of stuff in progress here, so you'll have to forgive how janky it looks. But this is where you actually kind of spawn into the ocean scene. So the ocean is one big scene.
Yeah.
And this is where you can pilot this little boat around. There's not a lot to do here. Actually, trying to remember the other
Dun,
thing
dun,
with working on progress for
dun.
5 years. I know, Wind Waker, a huge inspiration for this part. But oh yeah, see, we crashed there from trying to do something that
Yeah.
I have not fixed. Let me boot this back up.
Okay, what else can we take a look at here? So we looked at we saw the scripts and we saw the scenes.
You know, you talked about procedural generation. There is one place in Dolphin where I am intentionally doing procedural generation, and that is when you dive down underwater. And the reason for that is because it was important to me that the player could dive down anywhere that they wanted to, and not have to wait for certain little quest areas or something to be able to dive down. So in order to achieve that, I had to, I don't want to fight this guy right now. I had to come up with a way to kind of always have a place for the player to go if they chose to dive, right? So I can swim out here over this coral and use my dive flag. And this is going to put me into
So fun. It's a
a
mini game.
procedural underwater scene. So I didn't make this, right? There's a couple things that went into play here. Like, because I chose to use the dive flag over top of coral that I could visually see, coral is going to be spawning here. And that'll be even more impactful in the future when, you know, because the water's clear, maybe you'll see certain fish or something. This scene will be populated with that. And so this is kind of the entry into the diving mechanic, which is something that I need to spend some more time fleshing out. But, you know, you've got your air gauge up here and your depth on your little dive computer watch. And I've got some cool interactions where, you know, if you don't have a mask on, it's blurry. And if you don't have a tank on, you obviously can't spend as long underwater and things like this. But this kind of underwater exploration is something I'm really excited about for the game.
I love that mask thing that you can take
fun.
it off and it gets blurry. I
was
wish
fun
it
to
looked
make.
more pixelated.
Oh yeah, I've just got some Gaussian blur shader
Yeah, I
on
wish
there right now.
I wish
I'm
that
sure.
you could make it like more like a mosaic fractal.
Oh, that's a
So
good
that
feedback.
it felt like this, because like if you pull me out of the SNES experience, I feel like you're cheating me. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
no, that's fair.
I feel like
Yeah.
you're not trusting me. I feel like you think that I don't know that this looks like modern game.
Okay.
Whereas if it's Stardew Valley, everything about that game feels like you could literally put the cartridge in an SNES and it would play.
Mhm.
So there's part of me that's like, oh man, I wish you could find a filter that makes it look like pixelated blur, you know?
I'm sure I could. Yeah, that's good feedback. Yeah.
So go just spend the next 3 weeks on that, okay?
Sure. My next devlog. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a cool mechanic that you can. It's so. Is the diving kind of like a mini game type thing?
So I really intend for it to be part of a core part of exploration. So just as you'll be able to kind of visit different islands and fight organisms that have this corruption on them and stuff, I want that same level of kind of interest and explorability to happen underwater. So this is a very shallow island scene, but my intent is, and this is where we crashed a moment ago, a while back, I definitely had the ability to anchor the boat in the middle of the ocean. And when you dive in the ocean, it is super deep because I have kind of like a global notion of a depth map that informs all of these major scenes.
Wow.
And so when you are in the ocean, all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, 200 meters deep. And, you know, this is where we're going to break some realism, but I'd love the player to be able to quickly get down to where it's super deep, maybe find some caves, find some exotic anglerfish. You need a light source when you go deep. You know, I've got the light that filters out once you get past a certain point. So
Sweet.
yeah, I want all that.
Tell me how you did the particle effects. The way I think about Godot is I think everything has to be from scratch because there's no assets, there's no real systems. Is that an incorrect idea that I have?
Oh
about
yeah,
Godot?
I mean there are so many built-in nodes that give you. I mean these are all particle nodes that there is exactly like the particles in Unity, right? You get a little configurator, you change all these properties like velocity, direction, explosion, all this stuff. We've got all that stuff. Yeah, I see. But yeah,
it's like a religion, which by the way it is. The whole Unity religion or the Unreal, like everyone's in a cult and they yell at each other. It really annoys me. It's like, guys, it's a game engine.
Yeah, that part is silly for sure.
Okay, can we open up the artwork in Photoshop? I'd love to take a look at how you're doing this.
Yeah.
What is this? Wait, what?
You're wondering what this program is?
Yeah, what am I looking at?
So
This
this
isn't
is
Photoshop.
yeah, this is Sprite. This is probably, I mean, I might be stepping out of line here because I'm just not super familiar, but I think this is probably the most popular pixel art authoring program out there. It's clearly got quite a lot of personality to it, as you can see just from the UI here.
Yeah, this is ridiculous that it has to be, even the UI of Sprite looks like,
Yeah, looks like you're playing a game, right?
Pixel art. This is cool, dude. Wow. How beautiful.
Yeah, so this is like one of my finest pieces of pixel art, probably just this title screen here that I worked on somewhat recently. I'm pretty proud of this. But I mean, there are certainly, I'm trying to build a habit of working on pixel art like this so that I can really achieve what I want to with Dolphin's visuals. And it's saying that it's a process is certainly an understatement.
So the premise of this tool is forcing limitation on the artist.
Well, it's just made for pixel art, right? I think the definition of pixel art, as most people think of it, is intentionally placing each pixel, not just like doing something up cool in GIMP and then applying a pixel filter over it. So it's really a tool that is designed to help you make the best decisions possible about where you're putting pixels. Right. I think it's probably the best way I'm looking at it.
Sure. The reason I bring up limitation is pixel art looks bad if the artist has the freedom to create anti-aliasing, blurring, scaling up their objects, and getting resampling. It's forcing a very, very strict pixel grid onto the artist. Whereas Photoshop, if you're not careful, there's too much freedom in Photoshop, right?
Right.
And that makes bad art. It looks like bad pixel art. So let's talk about sizing really quick. The challenge with pixel art is that, like I was just saying, if you do the wrong pixel size, it looks like trash. Everything has to be exact. It's a mosaic, right?
Yeah. Yep.
How are you deciding on the size of your canvases? How are you deciding on the size of your pixels? So,
good question. These were kind of decisions that I feel like I made a long time ago. Just to be honest. So I know that Dolphin's viewport is 320 by 180, which I think is a pretty common like pixel art viewport size. And from there, to be honest, I think really what I did here was create my first version of my player sprite first and use that as my frame of reference for like everything else that I make. Like, here's how tall the tree should be based on the player. Here's how big the sailboat should be based on the player, things like that. So I kind of got to a design for the player that I was pseudo happy with, and I've just been going from there.
What's the that 2D up there, and then at the very top, very, very top of keep going in the middle. There's 2D, and then there's script, and then there's game.
This is like the place to actually preview visually this tree of nodes, right?
In the scene. I see.
So this is a visual preview of the scene. Script is taking you to, and I actually don't like this part about the editor, but it takes you to that's why I have this disabled, but it takes you to like the last script you had open, and instead of tabs at the top, it has like this left hierarchy of like so I keep that closed, to be perfectly honest, and if I jump around I just use a shortcut.
But if I want to, I can be on the 2D view, which is effectively scene view, and have Visual Studio opened. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So there is built-in support for external editors. You can configure an external editor to pass like command or like arguments to it, so that when you would click on this script icon, it would open this script in VS Code or Z or whatever you had.
And what does the game view do?
This is new. Game embedding is not available on Mac. Look, I lose. Should have been on PC.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna do. You're gonna end up on Linux. That's what you're gonna do, because
I've been there and I've come
it just
back.
seems like something you'd do.
Yeah, I've tried them all. I've landed on Mac, but I did like actually the only reason I'm not on Linux is because I just couldn't get like the OBS and video editing stuff working as well for me as I would have liked, frankly.
And that's actually why I've accepted the bloat of Unity, because I really don't like that terrifying feeling of, in an emergency, I need a tool, and then I'm like, oh crap, Godot doesn't offer it. Like Linux, you get your whole PC built, you've got Linux running, and then you're like, wait, I can't run OBS? And that's scary to me. So I accept the bloat. And I know this isn't fully logical, but I'll accept the bloat of Unity to avoid something like that. Like if I need to build out to Switch 2 and it's like, wait, Godot has no support for Switch 2. I don't know if they do, but that's scary to me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think the console support issue is actually important to a lot of people, and a reason why a lot of people don't use Godot, because it's open source. They can't really embed all of the tools that you need for a platform like Nintendo or PlayStation. So you kind of have to work with a third party to get that working.
Yeah, exactly. Or like Microsoft, you said Microsoft supports Godot. Didn't you say that?
Yeah, I think they provided monetary help for the C# support, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, sweet, dude. Thank you so much for showing me everything. I'm really impressed with what you've got. And you definitely have really good taste. I think you're on the right track for sure.
I appreciate it. This is, this is more feedback than I typically get, just scrolling through YouTube comments, and it's been super valuable. It really has been valuable to hear all the stuff about Dolphin and just about game development in general. So I appreciate it.
You bet, dude. Thanks for coming on. There is a link in the description for take your pick. What would you like in the description?
Cool. I guess either my channel, or you could go check out Range on Steam, since that's been out for like 2 months now.
Oh, we didn't even talk about Range. We can talk about it the next time you come on.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Links in the description for, I'll do your channel. For DevDuck devlogs are incredible. Ben's really good at making videos. So check that out below, guys. And thanks for coming on, Ben. Take it easy,
thanks for having me.
Yep. Cheers. And by the way, if you're making a mobile game, maybe it's similar to Dolphin or something much bigger, and you want to sell it directly on your own website, it's now possible with Xsolla. This is no longer a niche thing, it's becoming mainstream, which means devs can grow the revenue from live games. Even better, Apple has finally opened up the US market, making it legal to link out to a web shop and take direct payments for your mobile games, bypassing that 30% Apple fee. Xsolla has been doing this since the beginning, pioneering their web shop back in 2021. And now they have a new buy button solution that lets you drop an external purchase link right into your iOS game. Whether you're AAA, or you're making a casual game, or core, Xsolla has launched over 500 web shops, and they know what works. From a fully custom web shop to maybe a no-code template and going live much faster, they've got you covered. Click the link below and you get access to the super simple, world-class, and easy to implement live ops and payment tools, and add direct sales to your game.